The Practice Odyssey. I'm Jen.
And I'm Alex.
And today we are continuing on our behemoth project of Season 6, where we are working through the epic omnibus of Trevor Wye.
Trevor Wye Practice Book for the Flute, Books 1 through 6, Omnibus Edition. Over 1 million copies sold worldwide.
Oh, so this puts us on episode 3, which means that we are almost halfway through. Which we are. We're halfway through the omnibus. And I'm not surprised he sold 1 million copies because it is, well, I mean, we've really liked it so far, haven't we, Alex?
I would agree with that assessment. I think that we have enjoyed it pretty thoroughly. There are a lot of good golden nuggets of knowledge.
Oh, all the nuggets. So that's your highlight, all the nuggets of knowledge he drops?
Oh, well, I don't know if I can give away my highlight just yet. We're not at verdict territory, but it is always, I know, sorry, the spoilers.
The spoilers.
But yeah, I would say it's been going pretty well in our season of Why.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I've really enjoyed the different layouts. You know, we've done Tone, which was our first one, and then we did book 2, which was Technique. And then this week, Jen, we did book 3, the Articulation.
Articulation. Now, this one's a bit funny because in the omnibus, you've mentioned that he actually changes the order round to, even though they're labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he actually has articulation kind of not really in that order.
Yeah. So, even though the books are released, or in the omnibus he has it set up where I believe it's Tone, then it's just basically how we're presenting this season. So we're starting with Tone, then going to Technique, then Articulation, then we have Intonation, Vibrato, Breathing and Scales, and I think the last one was Advanced Practice. So but in his recommendation on how best to practice, which is what we look for, because if you were new to the flute or bought this book without any prior knowledge, that would be what you read and would do. He says that you should actually do the order of starting first with Tone, so that's all nice and good, and then going over to book 4 as step 2. So for Intonation and Vibrato, which we're doing in a fortnight, stay tuned. Or maybe we're not, who knows? Stay tuned no matter what. And then he pops over to book 2, which is Technique. And so that's just basically, he separates that from Scales, which we discussed in the previous episode, what the difference between Technique and Scales is. But yeah, Technique comes then next. And then 4th, he has book 5, which is then Breathing and Scales. And then the Advanced Practice book, he says you can just replace any of the exercises where you're already feeling quite comfortable on them in his books, replace them with the Advanced Practice versions of themselves. And then he just states basically articulation should be practiced throughout everything, which, I mean, makes sense. We have to use our tongue every day. But yeah, that's kind of like what he says. So book 3, Articulation, is something where he says, yes, do it every day, but basically it's choose your own adventure for articulation. You chuck it in when you think it's useful, or if you don't think it's useful, but probably do it all the same because you still need to practice it.
We're not going to give a biography on Trevor Wye or else you would hear it. This 6 episodes, there's probably a little bit too much information on Trevor Wye. So instead you can, if you're interested in knowing more about Trevor Wye, you can go to our first episode of this season on Tone, where we've got a lovely biography and background of Trevor Wye and who this man is. And in all these subsequent episodes, we are finding a cool fact about Trevor Wye and sharing it. So, Alex, I believe you have a cool fact. Well, I hope you do, because I haven't found a cool fact, so I'm really hoping
cool
you got
fact
one.
Is I have no fact. Yes. So my cool fact came from the flutejournal.com, which has Peter Westbrook as the editor-in-chief. And he did a review, I believe it's a review, of one of the books by Trevor Wye. which I'd never heard of before because I typed in Trevor Wye fun facts into Google. And this is what I came up with.
This is what came up.
It's called, I know, and it's called Trevor Wye Flute Secrets. Bum, bum, bum.
Ooh.
And basically, it's Trevor Wye just delving into all the secrets of the flute. So, anyways, which I thought was cool. I'd never heard of this book before. And so it's
really
basically advice for students, teachers, and professionals. So,
Man, I want this
we'll
book now.
tell you everything you need to know. So I found a new book that I don't know if there's much
Have you
that's
ordered
been
it
told
yet?
about it.
Because normally you're on this
know I
really
haven't.
quickly about all very...
Usually am.
You love all the
I've
weird and
published-
wonderful flute books. It's very admirable. But you haven't
is
ordered
very
it yet.
true.
Now I really want to order it.
Not yet.
Oh,
I know. It's
I might
published
try
by
and search up.
Novello. I'll put a link in the chat. Sorry.
Okay.
Link in the chat.
If someone else
Put a
wants to
link in
buy
our
it, read
show
it, and then
notes.
tell us about it, that'd be fantastic.
That would be good. Maybe this could be an episode for a later season. We'll see. There's so
Maybe.
many flute books out there. We are not wanting for literature material. So
We could
That
have
is
like a
quite-
season of tangents because we've had quite a few good tangents over the couple of years.
that is true. So some
worth
non-related
chasing
books,
up.
except for the fact that they're all related to things that we've gone on to tangents from.
Yeah.
That would be quite fun. So.
Let us know if you want us to do a season on that. We would appreciate
Yeah,
the feedback, whether this would interest
Send
you.
us an email. Leave us a comment. We're looking at you, little YouTube community. Keep going strong. So
We do appreciate your support. It's nice to know we're not alone in our practice odysseys, that there's a lot of you also on practice odysseys. That's quite lovely.
yeah, lots of other people who just want to sit and drink a coffee and talk about what practicing does and which ways they're the best to improve. But yeah, sorry about that little mini tangent about the cool Trevor Wye fact. But yeah, he has a book. So stay tuned
good one.
for our next episode. Jen will have a cool fact from somewhere.
Ooh, pressure.
So
How do I top that?
I'm looking forward
Okay,
to it.
Sure.
I know. Secret book. But yes, let's dive into our book for this week and kind of talk about the format of it. So we have, like we mentioned, book 3 this week, Articulation. So the table of contents for this book includes 3 overall sections. And he's doing the thing again, which I love, where it's a book about articulation, but there's this random bit popped in. Where, like, for example, in book 2, he did, technique, trills, sequences, which kind of all fall within the realm of technique. Great. And examples of those. Fantastic. And then he put in relaxing. So, which, I mean, is an important thing. We get quite tense when we're trying to, develop our technique. Yeah, so there's that whole bit about relaxing. Listen to that episode if you'd like to hear about his tips for how to relax the best while playing the flute. And so this book, in the same fashion, follows a similar pattern. So we have the section where it's like articulation and examples of it. And then he has a nice section about nerves. So nerves being our kind of random chapter in the book. I wouldn't say it's random. These things definitely do affect the playing, but I'm really curious, for example, why he didn't choose relaxing for articulation instead of like nerves. I mean, I don't know, like it makes sense a little bit because I guess for nerves that really does affect our tongue quite a lot. Like if you're nervous, your tongue can pop out.
Alex, it's so great that you're
pop out
talking about
physically.
this because this was literally my talking point for week 1 was why did he put nerves into this book in particular? And
Okay.
because I completely agree because I mean, like you said, with the previous book it had relaxing as part of the technique, which makes sense because the more relaxed you are physically, the more fluid and, I put in inverted commas, easy your technique becomes. Because I mean easy in the way in relaxed and fast and fluid, because if your muscles are relaxed without undue tension, you can play faster, have more control. So I understand the relaxing. The nerves with articulation, interesting. So you think it's because articulation gets very affected by nerves. That was your thought? That's your
That's what
your
I was
theory?
wondering, but in the
Your
same okay, that's my working theory, but it also, like, in the same vein, I would have thought, like, at least for me personally, the thing that nerves affect the most of my flute playing is my breath control or like my
That's
ability to
what
take
I
a
was
good
gonna
enough breath.
say. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Breath
Okay, sorry.
control.
I know we're jumping ahead a little bit here because I didn't. Sorry, listeners, but this is like that's usually where we have it. Like that it affects, if you're nervous, your ability to take a deep breath is hindered. Like it's just anatomy. It's what happens in our body. It's almost the same for everyone, unless you do work on it or you're aware of the situation. Just like with meditation, you're very mindful of it and you try to work, and do all your techniques to improve it. But for articulation, wasn't so like, okay, interesting.
I have experienced a breath goes with when I get nervous and about performance. But another thing which I've noticed also goes, the next one to go, or equally, is my articulation becomes less clear and less easy. And it feels very heavy and very unwieldy. So maybe that's why,
for me,
because he experiences the same
that
thing.
could
maybe
definitely
with
be
the
it.
articulation.
Right. I mean, does this topic of nerves belong in an omnibus book about flute playing? 100%. Yes.
Yes.
Agree. 100%. Definitely
Absolutely.
belongs here. We're just curious why put the nerve section in book 3. And maybe something more along the lines of endurance or like something about that discusses like ways to help improve your flute endurance. Like maybe that section he has, hopefully, I think it was in Tone. If I'm spoiling the next book, I'm so sorry. But where you're like, you see how much air you can expel or how far your rib cage can expand.
Oh, that's in
because that
breathing
deals
and
more with like,
intonation.
right, like some breathing. Yep. So yeah, I am spoiling it. Oh no, sorry.
No, but he does.
listeners.
He does mention he's got the long note competition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, that would have been kind of a more important thing. Maybe if you're going to include something where it's a little more in your head or something where it's like you're doing something physically for your body that's not directly related to your like playing through the flute. Would have been important here because that's something that maybe while we're tonguing, we tend to forget, if that makes sense. Like we're so focused on like making sure the tongue placement is in the right spot, it's at the right weight, it's everything's looking okay. So yeah, anyways, that's my thing. Sorry, listeners, you're getting a pre-verdict from me. But yeah, I would have wanted something like that here, I think, and saved nerves for like maybe one of the upcoming books where we talk about breathing or maybe even with tone as well, because that's another area where nerves can really affect the sound a whole bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can kind of cover up nerves with a bunch of articulation because your tongue is just going like... So,
Or
it's not as obvious.
like it does with me when I'm nervous.
Precisely. So that's a But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of your points. And nerves. I mean, the only other theory. This was my other working theory, which I came to in my 2 weeks of pondering upon this. I probably spent way too much time thinking about this.
Yeah, that's really it. Like, it's totally useful. Everything in there is great. Just the placement I'm just curious about. Because he's very deliberate. I'm sure there was a reason.
He is very deliberate. So there must have been some reason behind it. And I'm just trying to figure out what the reason is. Because I feel it'd be quite educational for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
My other theory was, okay, this is my other working theory. I love it. This is kind of turning into a conspiracy theory podcast. You're welcome.
Flute, the practice Odyssey conspiracy hour.
My other theory was, because of how you mentioned in the omnibus, how he says the articulation is a book which kind of almost like hovers over all the others and just gets brought in when it needs to be, and kind of overarches everything. Whether he's put nerves into this book because nerves will constantly be overarching everything that we will be practicing in these books. Like, nerves will affect everything. They'll affect our technique, they'll affect our tone, they'll affect our intonation, breathing, like everything. And that's why he's decided to put it in articulation. I mean, that was my other working theory. I don't know, but anyway.
No, I think that's
It was good to hear your theories
theory.
on it, because I did spend a ridiculous amount of time thinking about it. If any listeners have alternate theories throw them into the
Yeah,
pot. We'll
let us
love
know.
Yeah, we would love to hear them.
We can bring them up in our review podcast. So, and bring them up and we can all discuss it.
Yeah. I've like, you can tell that when this book was kind of written by the fact that he mentions beta blockers as being this new thing which is just coming in
Yes.
as a possibility. And I'm sitting there going, okay, they've been around a while and they're pretty well established as, things you can use to help control nerves and the adrenaline response.
A lot of the things that he mentions are definitely things I think I've tried everything in his book that he recommends. So, like, deep breathing, lying on your back, in the Alexander technique, like he mentions in book 2, kind of to also help relax you. And then like eating bananas, trying to avoiding stimulants such as caffeine. I wouldn't get anything done.
No.
But then I did like that, like in between that and the mention of beta blockers, he does kind of talk about power poses, but he doesn't call it a power pose.
But he doesn't call it a power pose. Yeah.
But it's totally a power pose. So he recommends power posing. And I have to say, I was listening to that podcast by the book a while back, and they did a whole episode on power posing. And they mentioned that sometimes it helps with dogs if they're barking. And I've tried it a few times on my puppy, just like power posed in front of him to stop him. He doesn't bark hardly ever. He's such a good boy. But when he does start to do his like little growl, I just stand over him sometimes in a power pose, and he does stop. It's amazing. So he's like, oh, okay, we're all set here. Mom's protecting or something. But so yeah, I would say that some sort of like energy does exude itself from power posing. So now I just have to try it maybe when I do my next audition. Just power pose in front of the panel before I bring up my flute. They can't see you anyways because you're usually behind a sheet. So
I know. They can't even see you. And it'll be like awesome. Yeah. Although it is awkward for those auditions where you do get provided those accompanists and then they can see you and they're just like, wow, what? Yeah. Can you just imagine them like, be sitting there and then all of a sudden like there's this full-on power pose happening. They're just like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
I mean, we've met our fair share of accompanists. I'm sure they've seen weirder things.
That's true. But, that's true. They must have...
Anyways, but yeah, I did like that made it into the book. I hadn't really considered it too much, like the using like the application of power posing in tackling nerves for flute playing before. I just hadn't put that connection together, and so I thought that was an excellent. So yeah, I was really glad because like all the stuff in there I had tried, but that one I had not tried with flute playing before, and now I will try that maybe.
But anyway, sorry, I kind of hijacked.
I was along for the ride. I was like, heck yeah, let's talk about this.
I'm going to call this my week one, was deep thinking about conspiracy theories into why Trevor Wye had put it into this.
I think
this
it can also be my week one. Week one will be the week of nerves.
The week of nerves. Because I must confess, both of my weeks were quite similar on this book. Like I didn't really change anything.
Yeah, spoiler. There's only like what 30 pages.
Yeah,
of
it's
material,
a very short book. Yeah,
it's a quite short book.
Although I'm going to say deceptively short book.
Ooh, nicely said, Jennifer.
It's really welcome.
That was really nice. So that was kind of your week was conspiracy. My week one was also conspiracy.
Right.
Like kind of, and I did work through like the beginning parts of the articulation, which to finish up my how the book is broken down, we do have the 3 sections: articulation, nerves, and examples. And articulation has 5 subsections, which I can delve into for my week 2, maybe. So it has like, well, of course, there's just a general overview, which, this is where, Paul Edmund Davies, I think, was inspired to kind of delve and like do a nice bit of writing beforehand. Well, I mean, the French flutists as well have done that. So I guess it's just a general practice. It's broken up into 5 sections. First with a general overview. Then you have slurs, single tonguing, double tonguing, triple tonguing, and the E-flat problem. So,
ooh la la.
yeah. And he does a beautiful... I really like how he introduces articulation. Oh no, my computer fell asleep.
I agree.
Yeah, so he recommends, like, he has a little plan like he did for the last books, where for how to use the book. And so he says, like, first start by reading the articulation opening section and how to use the slur. And then he says start with single tonguing, of course, then on to double tonguing and triple tonguing, and then checking with the E flat exercises anytime E flat is proving to be a hindrance in your flute playing. So, and I think in week 1, besides being puzzled by nerves, I did do his, like, very slowly and deliberately, his opening little preface section where he does a lot of the different exercises to kind of introduce the idea of how to introduce slurs and the role of the articulation in music, which I thought is super great. Sorry, that's kind of verticatory, but that's how he introduced it. Like, going in. And I think that's so important because, okay, I'm just jumping in, but, like, introducing, like, we articulate on the flute, but why? We could slur everything. It would be easier for our tongue. There would be less margin of error with regards to, like, clarity and precision. Of course, then you have other issues like finger technique that you have to look into to make sure it's all going smoothly, or else it sounds a little funny. But yeah, I thought that was really important, like the musical implications, like why you put articulations in certain places and how it's changed over history, like over the timeline of music. And I thought that was really, really awesome that he included that, because that's, like, if I was just a beginning flute player, I would want to know that as, like, a basis for going forward. So that was really cool. But yeah, I'd say for the first week, I did some single tonguing up to, like, fast single tonguing. He does some rhythms, and that was really cool. And then in week 2, I spent more time, like, kind of working on his little double tonguing areas. So, and his triple tonguing. So I also practiced some Scheherazade during this section. I forget if he has that. But yeah, so I would say the second week I did some looking into that, like going through and trying the different articulation exercises with a little bit of focus on, like, what he had for E flat, because I would say, like, maybe you felt the same way, but, like, the single tonguing, double tonguing, triple tonguing was kind of boilerplate for me. Like, it was pretty basic. Like, this is how you get started. Yeah. Okay. I would agree. But yeah, I was interested because not everybody includes the exercises on cracking notes. Like, we do that in, like, when we're teaching, but I did like those. And I did notice after, like, a week or so, I think my E flats were getting very, very secure. So yeah, I thought that was a really handy bit. And he also said in other notes in the right hand too. So, but then I also found it interesting because he did do a bit of, like, that, like, work with articulation, and particularly on staccato, just because, the way that we play that note on the flute with all, like, basically all the fingers down and certain openings in certain spots, it makes it very susceptible to cracking. But then because then, like, on the second page, it's all slurred, which is true. That makes it trickier. But then I would think that maybe goes a little more in the
because I find, like, E flat
section.
and D are the ones which go first if you're trying to do a nice clean double tongue or triple tongue on them. Like, they're the ones which crack so easy. And what we mean by cracking is when we play more harmonics than we're planning to.
Ooh,
is that how you would describe? Is that how you describe cracking? I've tried. Like, I'm just like, oh man, I had so many bad cracks in that, and everyone goes, "What was that?" It was like,
it's nicer than what I say.
What do you say?
When it sounds like my voice is going through puberty on the flute. So.
That's also a very poetic way of describing it. I quite like that.
Yep, my flute playing has gone back into the youth ages. So, but yeah. But I found them really nice, though, and I like how he also puts in a little bit about how many times you have to play it perfectly before you can even consider thinking that you've, like, mastered it. Because I think, like, so students forget that as well. But yeah, so that's how I kind of spent my week too, working on my E flats, and that's also I was surprised he didn't include A Midsummer Night's Dream in, like, his little examples, because that's just, like, a beautiful example of double tonguing.
With E flats.
With D's and E flats.
And all down low register as well, which is also hard to get nice, clear, low register double tonguing. Triple tonguing.
I did like that all of his examples for double tonguing were in that middle register as well. So,
Yeah.
but I was surprised Mendelssohn did not make the cut. So maybe because he uses it coming up in another example, he didn't want to have duplicates. But I would have thought that's usually why they pick it. You know, besides like checking musicality, it's just like your ability to play the middle register with the nice articulation and very even and smooth and precise. Blah 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 blah. All these buzzwords. So that's why they choose it for auditions. But yeah, so I think that sums up my week too. Kind of short and succinct. But Jen, how was your week too? How did you find everything else outside of the nerve conspiracy?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so week 2, I emerged from my conspiracy bubble, haze, mist, whatever we're going to call it. No, not really. I mean, I did articulation in the first week. I didn't just obsess.
Nerves.
But so why? Okay, so just yes, this is essentially the fortnight which I was focusing on. This is I would start off with the single tonguing exercises, then move to the double tonguing and triple tonguing. So I try to cover all 3 of them in one sitting.
Great. Yeah.
Which would take hours, because what he wants you to do is to do all of the exercises for single tonguing, which there are about, I didn't even bother to count them, Alex.
Yes, there are 19.
19 separate exercises, all quite lengthy, mind you, for doing single tonguing. Great. But then he wants you to do them in every single 24 keys. Okay, so then we're now into like extremely, okay, this is going to take hours territory. And he does that for the double tonguing and all the triple tonguing. Anyway, I decided, I was like, no, I'm not this dedicated. I'm sorry, Trevor. So I just picked, basically I was like, well, I've got, 14 days. I'm going to split it into, I'm going to divide them equally between, it didn't really work that way. But basically I just did 2 keys a day. I did 2 keys a day with all the exercises. And that broke it down into a nice, more manageable amount. And then let me explore the difficulties of each key, which each key does because you hit different notes, which all have different responses. What I really enjoyed about it was at the end of every section, he had his problems box where he would outline the most common issues which people hit when dealing with articulation. In particular, I really liked his suggestion for practicing double tonguing. So often when we start off with double tonguing, we are using 2 different articulations to be able to articulate very, very fast, because you can only go at a certain speed. So in order to be really fast, we switch into double tonguing, which is where we use the sounds t and k, or d and g, depending on your preference. And what this enables us to do is to use the downstroke of the tongue and the upstroke of the tongue in articulation. So we can go a lot fast, like okay. There we go. Instant lesson of double tonguing. But the problem is often, especially when you're starting out, the k sound or the g sound when the tongue is traveling back up is weaker than when our tongue is making the sounds t or d. So he's got a suggestion where you switch them. So you go k-t, 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 and then kind of emphasize the opposite. And I found that exercise, even for just like 1 minute or so, made a massive difference in the evenness of the sound of the articulation, which I really, really, as you know, I do enjoy a good, very efficient exercise. So that was definitely one of the highlights through the whole time. And another thing I really enjoyed was with the triple tonguing, he made you practice both sets of triple tonguing. So with the triple tonguing, you can either go tuku to tuku to tuku to, or you can go tuku to tuku to, I can't even do it, tuku to tuku to tuku to tuku to tuku. So you can tell which one I normally favor. But really you should be able to do both. But But yeah, so I liked how we got to practice both of those different types of triple tonguing. Alex, do you have like a more natural feeling the triple tonguing?
I definitely am more of the same camp as you. The that one. So, I always found that the problem for me is whenever we do it's a little more. You always have that potential that you can slide into just instead of making it like a triplet feeling.
Yeah, you do.
And also make sure that it doesn't slow down. So for me, maintaining rhythm and pace. That's the most important. And so for me, like to do that, the is the best way. Same question.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I was really. Those are kind of my highlights. Yeah, I think if you did all 24 keys, you'd be there a really long time. And I think
it would take you more time than you have in the day, even if you are a full-time flutist, I think.
Yes, and I don't know whether you should focus that much on articulation. Like he says himself in the book, this is something which you don't want to spend a long time on. You just want to come at it kind of a little bit frequently, practicing wise. So, by the end of this book, I really understood why he says he kind of wants this to float on the top of all the other technique books in the omnibus. Yeah, it made a lot more sense, I think, after working through it.
That sounds like you might be going kind of into verdict territory.
I'm sorry.
It's been a very to say about that too.
It's been a very I've been very unorthodox in my podcasting structure today.
But yeah, would you like to give your verdict? Then you can just continue on this nice little thought train.
Yes. Well, I think I did just give the verdict. I think, as you said, the history he mentions at the beginning of the book, and in particular the very clear, methodical, step-by-step instructions and build-up of each of the exercises for single tonguing, double and triple, I think are really great for flute players who are starting out and beginning to really start exploring the idea of articulation and wanting to improve it in their playing. So I think this book is particularly fantastic for beginners and for intermediate. Actually, I don't know. I think someone from all levels can come and take inspiration from the way he structured these exercises, and I think it's a really, really good book. It's a really good resource. So if I feel stuck on a particular articulation problem in repertoire, then I can come to this and probably and figure out a strategy of a way to fix it. So I think it's a really great resource. It's a really great part of the omnibus. And I think it's really useful from flautist, from beginner, all the way up. Yep. That is my verdict. And I'm still not sure why nerves are in there, but we will maybe never know. But it was good. Yep. There we go. Alex, what was your verdict?
My verdict, yes, I think is similar to yours. Love the nerve section. Still have questions why it's in this book, but I would say that I after playing through it, my initial question of why is this book not included in his overall, like 1, 2, 3, 4 of how you should structure your practice, and it's just kind of put at the top. I kind of understand why now, because the way he approaches the exercises, for single tonguing, the articulation changes for each one. Like he introduces slurs, so like da 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 da, or he goes da 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 without any slurs in between. Or I guess if you're slurring, it would be like wah. But he doesn't really. The notes don't change. He just does the same exercise, and then just like you were saying, Jen, says, okay, now go do this in all the other keys. I could see that being like, okay, like how you could structure this if you were maybe doing scales. So you could be saying, okay, I'm going to flip over to scales, which is book 5. Yes, book 5.
Yep.
And you could say, I'm going to do that. And now I'm going to, while working on, like, say, this scale, I'm going to implement I'm going to also focus on my single tonguing because, I have to do Mozart concerto in G, and that, to keep it nice and bouncy, it's usually encouraged to do it single tonguing. And so I will do to keep it even, I'm going to look in his articulation section and maybe do some bits with syncopation to, get that out. So like maybe exercises 1, 3, 2, 3, and 4, like, and kind of approach it that way. And so, and because he keeps the notes the same, it kind of is like, oh, okay. Like, and you can take out the music part, but keep his little blurbs on how to prepare the sections. So, like he'll say, like this is more difficult, but keep the rhythm accurate, accent with your breath, and tap your foot on the first note of every beat. That can be applied to the music he has there, or it can be applied to Mozart's concerto. So like you can easily kind of switch out a few of them. I mean, if there's references to different intervals, maybe not that bit, but I get why, because he kind of just teaches you, it's kind of like my sticky note, which I've always put on my music when I'm practicing. If you come up to a hard technical passage, you do rhythms on it to try and like help nut out the, the issues or discrepancies. Yeah. And he's basically done that on like one scale pattern. Throughout, like you said, many different ways, and said, here's it written out. Now you just have to do it in all the scales if you want to work on like that aspect of it, or if you want to put it into implementation, here's like the rhythm, just put in your notes instead. So I get it now. And it kind of, and if you're not working towards that, so that approach might be better for example, a more advanced player. But for introducing this kind of approach to articulation, doing it on just one set of notes that are not boring necessarily. Like he does it where there's like some thirds, and it goes up and down. Kind of makes it a little bit of fun. And he even does one of the Reicherts, which we had mentioned is like the best fun scales for the flute, in our opinion. Like they're very lyrical and they're kind of fun. Which ones did he do those on again? Is it the triple tonguing that were you?
Yeah, it was the triple tonguing. Yeah.
Triple tonguing. Yeah, he does it formed after one of the Reichert scales. Yeah. And so I thought that was a really nice approach to kind of like help whet the appetite of the younger flute players, while at the same time providing structure and kind of introducing like how to, maybe if you forget things while you're playing because you get frustrated or you're like, oh, what am I not seeing? Why is this still sounding not so great? Why is my flute cracking or splitting? Then to come in here and maybe just have a quick peruse through his suggestions, or even just go straight to the problems box and then try those. Yeah. So I would say I understand now why he structured it the way he did. But except for the nerves bit, that's still my question. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this to somebody who's just trying to who's working on articulation and wants kind of an overall approach. But I would say that I think I like Paul Edmund Davies' exercises a little bit more in his 28-day warm-up. Like, I think they're a little funner. Is that the word to say here? But yeah,
I think so. I think they're also more advanced. Like they assume a lot of knowledge, whereas this one doesn't assume any knowledge. It's kind of starting you from the ground up. And if you want just like a basic like exercise, like, oh, today I want to do some articulation and you don't want to think about it too much, Paul Edmund Davies 28-day warm-ups for all flutists eventually. And if you want to kind of, you're like, oh, I have to do an audition, I have these 5 pieces I need to prepare or 5 excerpts, and I need to make sure that whatever I'm doing to save time is very tailored to my, practice regime. Then Sharon Sparrow's, nice little warm-up suggestions that she talks about in her book where you tailor your own warm-up. This would be a great tool to help you accomplish that. Like, how can I help prepare Mendelssohn's Midnight's Scherzo to Midnight Summer's Dream? Take out some of these exercises, replace it with the keys that are most pertinent and the octave range as well. Yeah, this would be a great tool for someone who's just learning how to like write their own warm-ups and tailor them to a specific event. Yeah. So, that's my verdict. So great resource tool. It's a great resource.
But the nerves, that's it.
The nerves, still confounding.
Yeah.
The nerves. But we were halfway through the omnibus, Alex. Holy moly.
We are. We're halfway through, listeners.
Please join us for the next venture into this wild world of the omnibus of flute practice. You can find the Practice Odyssey, so you can go back and listen to previous episodes of this omnibus on basically all podcast platforms. Let us know what you think about any of the things that we've talked about on this Practice Odyssey. You can write to us at thepracticeodyssey@gmail.com. If you're feeling in the mood, please leave us a rating or comment on Apple Podcasts, or subscribe to our channel on YouTube by searching for the Practice Odyssey podcast. And if you like it, please do like, because that does help us with the wild world of algorithms. The music in this episode is from Alessandra Woods, and the show art is by the wonderful Ivan Pottersmith. I hope you have a wonderful couple of weeks, and that we look forward to having you join us back on our
Season of Why.
season of Why. All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.